Hi guys, and welcome to Paranormal Hauntings. We have a bit of a special one for you tonight, not one of our normal broadcasts that we normally do. We normally do the ghost investigating and things, but tonight we are joined by the lovely Mike Covell, who, if you don't know, is Hull's historian. And he's going to take us through some of the streets in Hull and show us, you know, the buildings and the history, and give us some of the ghosty stories, the folklore, that kind of thing. So we're excited about it. We can't wait. It's, yeah, just going to wait for a few of you to come on to get notified, because I know it takes a little bit of a while, so none of you miss anything. Also, as we're walking, if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask as we're walking and we've got chance, I will ask them questions. Let us know if you've also visited Hull, or if you plan to, because if you plan to, you can do one of Mike's lovely tours he does when you do come. Hi everyone.
It's like a little taster session.
Yeah, Hull has a really interesting history. It's fascinating, really, and I don't feel like it kind of gets the credit that's like York gets, or maybe Lincoln gets, that kind of thing. I think it should, because it is vast. It is vast. Hi Irene, hi Laura, hi Kathleen, hi Jackie. Jackie did fantastic last night. Who agrees? We looked back on her questions that she was asking during our spirit box experiment, and oh my god, she did a brilliant job, and the responses were interesting. Were really interesting. So Mike has also got some old maps, think you, Mike?
Yeah, lots of pictures for you, old maps. So we'll be able to look at them while we're walking around and just see the city, what it used to look like back in the day, what the docks used to look like and stuff like that. And basically tonight I'm going to take you for a spooky tour around the old town walls, which are no longer there, but there is a few clues along the journey, so you'll be able to see stuff. I'll point them out to you and tell you some of the history behind them and some of the dark history behind them as well.
I just had a lady comment. She said a relative haunts the tax office.
Oh.
Alright, so yeah, would that be Arthur Lucan, Old Mother Riley? There was a Tivoli Theater which stood on Paragon Street. It was where Arthur Lucan died in the 1950s, and it's since become a cafe called the Orchard Cafe, and inside there's actually a bust to Arthur Lucan, but after it closed down, it became the tax office, and it was quite well known that he had a bit of beef really with the taxman. And if you bear with me, I'll find some photos.
Old Mother Riley.
Old Mother Riley.
Let me just show you this, because I find this fascinating. At one point I did thought it was a ghost. Let me just show you. So there's a statue. The statue, and then it kind of projects onto the road at the side, and yeah, when you drive past it you think, oh my god, who's that? It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So if you can give this a thumbs up for us and give it a share, we would be extremely grateful. I'll just show you the building. Why it's dinging.
We always do that, don't we?
We do.
Get to churches right in the nick of time.
We do.
Lincoln scared us half to death, though.
It did. It's not going to ding.
Right, so there's the newspaper report of Old Mother Riley. And then the theatre.
Oh wow. And does that still look like that now then?
No. It's been knocked down. It's all been replaced by concrete. But there's a cafe. But as you can see there,
Wow.
he had issues with the tax man, and then when the theatre was knocked down, it was replaced by the tax office, and that's when the hauntings started. And it's so different now. It's other side of the city centre, but it is just like a concrete office block.
Yeah.
But like I say, it was replaced by this tax office. And to this day, if you go into the cafe downstairs on the ground floor, there's a bust of Arthur Lucan, and there's a couple of playbills. And some of his family do come back to the city every year to celebrate his life and his career.
Oh.
And he's buried at Eastham Cemetery, and there's ghost stories attached to his burial place as well.
Right.
But yeah, it's quite an interesting man. Interesting character. And he also did a play called Ghosts.
Oh.
So, which
yeah.
was quite interesting. But yeah, it was quite creepy because he would dress up as this lady called Old Mother Riley, and he had this really high-pitched voice. And if you go on YouTube, you can find his videos and stuff on YouTube when he's talking. It just creeps me out. Just him being his most famous character.
Do you think then, if he is haunting the location, it's because he's got that kind of like creepiness about him that you'd kind of get the kicks out of doing it?
Yeah, well, I think it's because of his beef with the taxman.
Right, as well.
You knock down his beloved theatre and you build a tax office on top. After all the troubles he had with them during his life.
Yeah, it's a bit of a
It's going to make him restless.
slap in the
Exactly,
face.
But there were stories of the workers in the tax office sat there working, and they would just walk by, and he would be dressed in the full Old Mother Riley regalia with the cloak and the old boots and his hair all done up and everything. And that went on for quite some years. That was reported years and years ago. I remember as a kid being told that story.
Yeah, that's the first time I've ever heard of it. Yeah.
Well, this building where we're standing right now. So we talked briefly about Andrew Marvell and the statue. This is the Hull Grammar School. Today it's the Hands-On History Museum. And years ago, during the 80s, there was a wonderful ghost story connected to this place. According to this story, this man had been at a pub, and he was riding home on his bike after 10 pints, and he looked up at the window on the first floor, and he saw the face of a 19th century vicar called Reverend Yates, who works at St Mary's Church, and it made him fall off his bike. So he gets home to his wife, she says, "Where have you been?" And he tells her this story, she believes him, and the story gets passed on, and eventually it ends up in newspaper articles, and then it ends up in books. And then I come along and said, well, wait a minute, if you saw a total stranger, how would you know his name, his occupation, where he worked, and when he was from, you know, what century he was from. But you can't just say that in the paranormal because people will go mad. So I went away and researched it and spent months and months researching it. Now the archives in Hull have the history of the grammar school. So I went to the history centre and got all these box files, hundreds of box files, and went through them all meticulously, and there was no record of Reverend Yates. And I went to St Mary's Church and looked at their records. They have a print of all the priests and stuff that have worked there, no record of him. Went to the Holy Trinity Church, or Hull Minster as we call it today, no record of him there. All the trade directories, no record. Census, Burgess Rolls, polling books, you name it, no record. And then back then they used to have something called Crockford's Clerical Directory, which was like an A to Z of vicars. So it was like a phone book just with holy men. And I got all the years of that for the Victorian period, no record of him. So it looks like this fella's been at pub, got home late, been in a bit of a state, made up this cock and bull story, his wife believed it, and then it's just spread like wildfire, like Chinese whispers. If I had 10 pounds, I won't be able to get on a bike, never mind get on one and fall. But the interesting thing is, the staff in there...
It's weird because when we went round, I zoomed into the windows at the first floor. That's the first thing I did. I didn't even know.
I was looking up and watching. But on the ground floor, at this far end, the staff have seen a gentleman stood wearing a suit which fits in with the time when it was a school. And then on the top floor, at this end, there's prams. And in the morning, sometimes the staff have come in and the prams have been bulled all the way along to the end.
Wow.
I mean, we've been in it here on a night. And I've been stood facing that way talking to clients, and clients have been stood looking that way, and a number of them have seen red flashing lights in there and stuff like that. So it is an interesting building.
Yeah, I definitely think you would. I think that's why I automatically zoomed into the windows at the top.
Yeah, gorgeous. I mean, you can see things as well like the merchants' marks, the people
that
built it, and then the 3 crowns or coronets that are associated with Kingston upon Hull.
I'll zoom in for them for you. 1 minute.
What date does that say? Is it 1385 or 15?
15.
1585.
Yeah,
Hello, everyone.
it's gorgeous. And then the area where we're standing now, this would have been the churchyard. So
Yep.
years and years ago, this would have been a wall, and they knocked the wall down. And basically, the idea was they were going to open this all up so that people could, come into the square. And when they knocked the wall down, personally, I thought it lost quite a lot of the character.
Yeah.
And I'll show you a picture of what it used to look like. It was gorgeous.
Oh, wow, yeah. So, I've just got what it looks like now,
I
yeah.
like that shot better.
Now,
Yeah.
you can see the wall there, but you can see the metal railings and all the
Yeah.
trees. They chopped the trees down, and then the railings were taken during the Second World War for bombs and bullets, and then the wall was eventually lost. Not that long ago, actually, because I used to meet clients at the wall before I started my tours, so it's not been gone that long. And the only thing in its place now, and you've got to be really clever to see it.
So if anybody coming on, this is Old Trinity, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you look at the floor with the metal,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
this is
Oh, yeah.
where the wall would have stood.
Ah, so that's the only thing kind of like,
This is marking where its position was.
yeah.
That's quite nice. So it's
Yeah,
it's,
there are-
it's
kind of got
yeah.
it's still there. It's
Yeah.
still a part
We've
of it.
we've done that at a few places, which I'm going to take you to see in a minute. But there's nothing to signpost that. There's nothing to show people or signify or let people know that that's there. Which I
Yeah.
think's a bit of a shame. Because as a tour guide, I have to point it out to people because people don't
Yeah.
know that sort of stuff. But usually when you come into the square, where the cars are all driving through now, they don't usually drive through the middle of the square, but we've had the boxing on tonight. You'll see the squares just near the edge of the bench, and these are mirror pools, so they do offer like a reflective surface. And they usually have water on, but when it gets to the colder months, they stop running. And during the summer months, you'll see kids running through them. Or I like to call them pigeon pools because the birds come and drink and sit
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Bird pools, bird
So,
baths.
if you're ready, we can.
Yeah, we're ready.
Exciting.
I just wanted to ask because I mean I've always come to Hull to visit the deep.
Yeah.
Love the deep. Is the deep haunted? I'm sure I've been told it is.
Yeah. Well, what we'll do is we're going to head round that way.
Okay.
So we'll tell the story.
Yeah,
Get
yeah.
ahead of yourself.
Sorry.
But yeah, it's been story. I mean, on that site as well, going back centuries, there's been stories.
Yeah. Has anybody ever investigated it?
No, we did ask many years ago. A few years ago, a big incident took place there.
Yeah.
And that led to several people coming forward with stories. So at the time, they were approached and asked.
Yeah.
And they basically played it down and said, we're not really interested in that sort of thing. But then a short while later, they did like a Halloween night. But it was aimed at kids, it wasn't really aimed at adults. But yeah, essentially, it'd be a great venue because it's so big inside. And I mean, imagine doing a ghost hunt underneath a shark tank.
I know.
Yes.
They're not. There's
There's
what?
fishes.
Is there?
Yeah, well,
Oh.
basically, part of the route that we're going on is called the fish trail.
Oh, let me just show them the fish. That's what she means by there's little fishes. There's not actually real fishes. It is, it's a lovely night. And do you know what? To say it's November, it's actually really warm. Oh yeah. Little fishes.
I just like quirky little things like that. I get really excited over little things like them.
Are they the original cobbled road?
This one.
These
Yeah.
here, I believe so. You can sort of see where it bends.
Yep.
Where over the years the traffic's avoided it. In some of the older streets in the old town, at the edge, like here, on this particular stone, you can see where it's been ground down
Oh,
over the
yeah,
years
yeah.
by the carriages. You can see a line of where the carriages are.
Oh yes. Wow. Mike does know his stuff. He does. I've known Mike a few years now, and his research has always helped me out in the midst of the night. Hasn't it, Mike? When I've been like, Mike. We have.
And it's usually, if you do a live show and I'm sat watching, and you mention stories and stuff, I'll try and research them for you, find the history.
He does, bless.
So,
Yeah, you quite often.
I'll send you
comment
maps.
sections, don't you?
Send you maps and stuff. So this here is Dagger Lane.
Oh, wow.
So, and this is actually where ship's daggers were made.
Right.
But in the old days, this would have been called Champagne Lane.
Yeah.
Which sounds a lot better. So this building here is a pub at the moment, but this was a mission. So if you went to sea, you would pay some of your wages into the mission. And if you died at sea, your family would get financial help and stuff like that. Inside there is a chapel, so people could go in and pray for the safe return of their loved ones. There were stories of people seeing a woman in the chapel sat down like she was praying, and people have seen her on several occasions. But on this street itself, people have heard screaming, like a woman screaming. Now, if you go back into the history of Hull during the 1840s, and I mean, I've got to say this is a trigger warning if people don't like gore and stuff like that. But in the 1840s, there was a family down here called the Mattox family, and Thomas Mattox lived with a lady called Elizabeth, and they were drinkers. They liked to have a few beers on a weekend, but she was notoriously drunk all the time. And they would go into the pubs and clubs and theatres on a place called Humber Street, and they would drink all day, and then they would fight and argue, and he would often beat her up. On one occasion, she'd come home from pub really drunk, and he'd said to her, "Here's some more money, go back to the pub." She went back to the pub, and when she came back, there was a big fire in the property, and she said, "What's the fire for?" And he said, "It's for you," and he grabbed her and he threw her on the fire, and he left her to burn.
God.
Now, the police officer that came described the body as being burnt to a crisp. Mr. Mattox was arrested. He never tried to put the fire out. When all the neighbours and stuff came with buckets of water, he just sat there and watched. He then fled the scene and went back to pub and left them to deal with it, and he was arrested. He was taken to the police station, which is not that far away, and then at the police station he basically said, "Yeah, I set her on fire," basically. When it went to court, they turned around in the court and said, because they'd been arguing, it was manslaughter, which was a much lesser charge. And then when it came before the jury, Mr. Mattox was let off, and he was never. Technically, he should have hanged for that, or at the very least been given life imprisonment. He was let off, and then within a week of the court case, it was announced that he'd been given tickets to travel to America to have a brand new life. And it's shocking to me. Now, recently, I don't know which way you came into Hull, but if you were coming via Castle Street, you'd have seen where the old cemetery used to be. They've just dug that up. Mrs. Mattox was buried in there. So it makes sense to me that she's not at rest. That's maybe why people are hearing her. But yeah, it's a tragic story, and there's a lot of cases like that. A lot of the men in Hull that committed crimes like that during the Victorian period were often let off.
Why do you think that was? Would you think that's because they had...
A lot of it was money.
I was going to say they had money.
Power,
Yeah.
A lot of it was a certain group that we talked about earlier on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you see all the fish now, loads around here. So people got let off all the time. This was one of the pubs actually that she went drinking in. But yeah, it was such a tragic story, and there's quite a lot of locations in Hull linked to kind of infamous stories like that where people have reported activity. I'm going to take you now to a dock, which is quite a modern looking dock.
What is the oldest building in Hull?
Well, the churches date from the 1300s.
Yeah.
So you've got hundreds and hundreds of years of history of them. This is a bit of an argument over which is the oldest pub.
There always is.
Yeah.
Nottingham's the same.
The Christmas lights are getting turned on in a couple of days' time, and I believe that's what's going on now. They must be practicing. So where we are right now, this is the edge of the town, as it would have been during the 15 and 1600s. So if you look at that image, we are roughly about here.
Yeah.
And basically what happened with the town, we had a big wall built all the way around. So on the other side of the river, you had the south blockhouse, the citadel, and the north blockhouse, which is just out of frame. The citadel was the castle in the middle, and they had a big curtain wall. At this side, if you're ever looking at history, the history of Hull's real simple. So at the north, we had the North Gate. The gate that led to Beverley, just where that cyclist is, that was Beverley Gate. The Myton Gate was the gate that led to Myton, and then we had the Hessel Gate, which we're going to walk up to in a minute, that led to Hessel. Where we're stood right now, we've just walked down a place called Poston Gate, and the Poston Gate was here. This is where people would come for the fresh water, and these would have been surrounded by ditches. Now, there's nothing to mark the importance of this site, but if you look real carefully at the floor, look where you're standing, you'll see the brickwork's different.
Yes.
And this is to represent where the Poston Gate would have been and where the town walls would have stood.
Right.
So you can't really see it on here, but there's a circular tower just there.
Yep.
And this would have been the circular tower. So today it's marked by a wheelie bin and a lamppost. But going back, this would have been the Poston Gate. Now, in later years, in the 1700s, we started to get rid of all the town walls and we built all the docks. So the first dock that was built in Hull was built just where the lights are over there, and it was known originally as the dock. In later years, when it got old, they called it the Old Dock. And in 1854, when Queen Victoria sailed through it, Queen's Dock. Today it's filled in with a garden, so we call it Queen's Gardens. Now there's been a lot of weird sightings over there, including apparitions of women, crying children, and the sound of crying children. Now if you look at the history of that particular dock, there was a lot of infanticides in the 1870s where women, especially servant girls, would get pregnant and dump their children into the dock waters. And then behind us, this dock was called the Junction Dock because it formed the junction between Queen's Dock and the Humber Dock. When Queen Victoria sailed through in October 1854, she sailed through with her husband, the Prince.
Oh.
So it's the Prince's Dock.
Right.
Locally, for some reason we call it Princess Quay, or if you're a true local you abbreviate it even further, it's called Privy Quay. But in this dock alone, between 1800 and 1900, there was over 1,000 recorded deaths.
Oh gosh.
And that was infanticides, people drowning. But one of the most interesting ones for me, there was a guy, back then all the boats, if you can imagine, all the ships would have been real tightly packed in there. And back then you could jump from boat to boat to get to your own boat. And there was the story of this gentleman, and he'd basically been jumping from boat to boat, and the dog had ran out, jumped up at him and pushed him in the dock, and he drowned. And it went to court because who was responsible? The dog or the dog owner? And in the end they couldn't decide who was responsible for it, so they just said it was an accident.
Yeah.
But this whole area is really interesting. You can't really see it from here, but where the lights are just underneath the quay, that is Ferrens Art Gallery. That was originally St John's Church, and in 1917 Thomas Ferrens purchased the church and he basically knocked it down, and he built an art gallery on the site. Now when he knocked it down, he got rid of all the bodies that were buried beneath, and he basically exhumed them. That's what it would have looked like. So if we move a little bit further this way, you can just see the top of the dock office. So, and the original Wilberforce monument and the church. So they exhumed the bodies and they put the bodies all over different burial sites.
You can see there is that top of the.
And they exhumed the bodies, and since then, when they built the art gallery, people had heard stuff in the art gallery, but they have a big black grand piano.
Right.
And people had heard it playing on its own, and 8 different staff members independently had all come forward to me and said, we've heard this piano and we don't know what's causing it. And I was like, well, other people have heard the piano as well. And then in the quay, like I said, it's a modern building, but in there on the top floor, security staff have reported seeing a full-bodied male apparition. Fire alarms will often go off in there and doors will open and close on their own.
So a haunted shopping centre.
Yeah, and like I say, it's quite modern. It's
it looks it, don't it? But it's the land, isn't it?
It's the land, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of tragedy in this area. I was just researching a murder that took place on Waterhouse Lane, which is at the other side of the quay.
I've seen that, you post recently,
I was researching that one recently. So, right, we'll walk a little bit further down.
When you research murders, do you feel connected to the person that?
Yeah, I've just finished a book on child murders.
Oh.
And I think every day when I finish writing, it was just like, right, turn it off, go watch an
Yeah.
episode of Friends or chill out with
Something.
the family. Some of the stories were really bad, really tragic, and you kind of feel for them. You know, these are little kids that, first off, they couldn't defend themselves, but secondly, the stories are unknown. The stories have never been told before. So to be able to research that and to be able to write about that,
You give them souls a voice in a
we're
way.
giving them a voice,
Yeah.
We're giving them a voice and we're telling their story. At the minute, I'm writing a book on the murders of women in Hull, and again, really tragic. There's loads of stories where, you know, men would argue with the wife and beat them up, kill them, throw them down the stairs. Some of the stories are just awful when you read some of the injuries that they sustained, and then at the inquest, when they reported on the inquest, you'd hear that this was a continual circle of abuse that was going on for quite some time, and it was unchecked. No one had stopped them or done anything about it. It's really, really sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people do still shop in there. That is a active shopping centre.
Fancy going for a bit of a walk there?
At the minute, they're just putting in a nightclub at the bottom.
Oh.
So yeah, the flooring, you'll see where the bollards are, the red brickwork to mark where the walls would have been.
Right.
So technically now we're walking in what would have been the ditches.
Right.
And as you can imagine, this is where people would have thrown their refuse, the crap, all the toilets. You know, there were no drains or anything like that back then. Everything would be put over here, but at the same time, the fresh water coming into the town would have to pass through the ditches. So this is where we had massive outbreaks of things like the Black Death.
Somebody just mentioned about the Black Death. Yeah.
The plague. You know, we had visitations several times. And on some occasions they blamed it on witchcraft. I remember at one point a couple of people was rounded up and accused of witchcraft, and they were basically stuck on the market cross and tortured. And the plague was blamed on them.
Yeah. Yep, Mike does do books, so when we finish we'll tell you where you can find him. I'll post up some of them, so I will share them on. Is it looking like 39 degree book might be coming out soon?
Due before Christmas.
Brilliant. Woo!
So yeah.
The historical fact on 39 degree is coming out, so been waiting a few years for that one, Mike.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah. A long time. So if you stop here and look back.
Oh wow. I'll put it to there, yeah.
So that would have been the site of the dock as it was back then. And these gates that are here now, these are modern. So if you can imagine, the dock would have been unprotected. There was lots of stories of people falling in. There was actually a guy called John Ellithorpe who worked the docks, and he worked at the lock gates here, and it's his job to rescue people. He was paid by the whole dock company to patrol the docks on a night, and during his lifetime he saved 40 people from drowning, including his own dad and his own son. So he was quite a well-known guy.
Going up this building and seeing this coming in, because I was like, ooh, this is nice.
So this is our brand new multi-million-pound bridge. It's called the Murdoch Connection. It's named after Mary Murdoch, who was a female GP. But locally we know it as Sid the Sloth, because it does look a little bit like Sid the Sloth's on.
It doesn't look. I see it. I can see it. A little bit.
Hi, Pat. Going over the bridge. Boats over there. The sky looks beautiful on camera tonight. It does.
So this is Castle Street, because it would have headed over to where the castle was.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So where we are now then, this is our modern day marina, but this would have been the junction dock at this side and the Humber dock at this side. So we're roughly standing where these warehouses are on this map, on this aerial photograph.
Wow.
And what we're going to do is we're going to walk down the water's edge along this side. But again, a lot of tragedies. One of the biggest ones during the Victorian period, there was a steamer called the Union Steamer, and it exploded in the Humber Dock Basin, and they picked the bodies up from one of the pubs over by the waterside from the roof of the pub, so the bodies went quite far. But yeah, big tragedy.
It's seen a lot of tragedy, hasn't it, Hull? I mean, I know every city has, but...
we got bombed during the Zeppelin raids of World War One. We got bombed during the Blitz in World War Two. Over 2,300 people died during the Second World War in the town. It was a big port, so it was known as the Third Port, so it was attacked by the Germans because we had links to trade and international shipping and stuff like that. So there was a lot of tragedy, you know, and then we had several big tragedies as well. We had a lot of warehouse fires, warehouse collapses, mass tragedies where lots of people died, and they're all but forgotten about today.
Yeah.
And walking around now, you don't really... I mean, obviously, we're not going to advertise the fact that this is where this person died or went.
No.
But you don't see it, you know, it's quite modern.
It looks fresh, it looks new, don't it? It don't look like, you know, a place that's had a lot of tragedy to it, does it, you know?
So what we'll do is we'll head up towards Humber Street. Along the way I'll show you Blanket Row, which was where we had the cholera at one point. Lots of people died down there, and we used to have their own dead house, which was kind of a mortuary. And that was where there was a small police station / fire station, and anyone that died in this dock would be taken there. Their body would be taken into that building, and there would be obviously an autopsy and things like that. Where we are right now, just over that side where the green lights are, beyond that we've got the Castle Street Cemetery, which is the overspill cemetery for Holy Trinity Church. They've just exhumed all the bodies there because they want to widen the road.
Right.
So all of them have been dug up. At the other side of the water, you've got Whittington and Kemp, which is a local pub during the Victorian period. So during the Victorian period, if you died in this dock system, your inquest would be held in the Whittington and Kemp. So there was a lot of tragedy linked to the pub. Now in the rear room, this street here is called Woods Lane, and in the rear room people reported seeing a man and hearing a man walking around. Well, if you go back through history, the first landlord was called Samuel Woods, and his son took over the pub and killed himself hanging in the back room, and that was where their little brewery was. So there was a death attached to that room where people have been experiencing stuff. But yeah, the marina's lovely. It's nice on a night
It
when the
is
sun's setting.
nice, yeah. Nice to take a stroll up here.
It's quiet tonight. It's peaceful in this section.
But it's not on a Friday and Saturday night.
Bank holiday weekends down here used to be bedlam.
Yeah.
There were like 6 or 7 pubs, and everyone used to come to this area for a drinks early in the night. So yeah, it was quite busy, quite bustling. And then gradually over the years there was a bit of a decline. And then they've sort of been doing a lot of improvements in the area, which we'll see in a minute, to try and drag companies back and to bring punters back, I guess. So again, if you look along the flooring, the red bricks are supposed to represent where the walls would have gone.
Yeah.
So again, at this side, technically we're outside of the old medieval pub, and we're walking along what would have been the ditches.
I could listen to Mark all night. Everyone's saying they could listen to you all night. We said that last time, didn't we, when we were in lockdown. We was on a chat. We was like,
Yeah, we had a chat.
we could listen to you all
this
night.
is Blanket Row opposite, and during the outbreak of the cholera, Blanket Row was cordoned off at both ends. They put big barrels out with tar in, set it on fire. You weren't allowed to go down there unless you was a doctor or you was a priest. And there was lots of stories of people dying down there. There was a guy called Reverend James Seabury, and Seabury was one of the priests that was granted access, and he wrote a memoir, and in his memoirs he basically talks about all the poor people that had died in that particular area, and it's really fascinating to see his account, you know. But yeah, a lot of tragedy. And then outside of Humber Tavern, during the 1870s, there was a gentleman who was a flower seller. He used to sell flowers to people, and he made them from wooden shavings, and he would basically turn the shavings into petals, and he would paint them, put a stalk on, then sell them from pub to pub. And his name was William, and he went into the Humber Tavern many centuries back in the 1870s, and these gentlemen saw him. They started pouring the beer on him, they was kicking him about, and they set fire to him, and it killed him. And when the police turned up, because back then the police station was just around the corner, there were no witnesses, and his death was never solved. No one was ever arrested for it. Again, if you look at the brickwork here, they've used this as a beer garden, which is genius. But the brickwork here, you'll see that it juts out. And this is where the guardhouse would have been.
Right.
So, and the guardhouses would have, the guards would have slept in there, and they would have eaten in there, and then they would have patrolled the walls and stuff like that. Now, during the 1600s, in 1642, Charles I, the King of England, came to Hull, and he demanded access into the town at Beverley Gate. And in Hull, we basically said, we told him to piss off. We didn't want him here. So he left, he went to places like Beverley and Cottingham. He raised an army, the Royalist Army, and they came back and they held 3 sieges on Hull. And during that period, we just closed all the gates and just ignored him. We had the river and we had the estuary, so we could carry on trading with people around the country. And he basically flooded what is this side. He basically flooded it by opening up all the sluice gates. All the land was flooded, and he thought he was basically cutting us off from the rest of the world, but we could just carry on trading. And then of course he left Hull, went down to your neck of the woods, went to Newark, and yeah, and the English Civil War started just after that. So there you go, watch out for the swordfish.
Not literally a swordfish.
So we're coming up to a place now called Humber Street. If we go back through the history of Hull, Humber Street would have been actually the front. It would have been basically the at the water's edge, hence the name Humber Street. Originally, this would have been called the ropery, and this is where ships' ropes would have been laid out, and it would have been laid out to dry in the sun. And then when we dug the docks, all the spoil, all that soil and earth, was deposited from this side. So everything you can see from here dates from the 1700s. So this is reclaimed land. So the Humber would have been here.
Right.
So, and you can see it on this map. This is Humber Street, just here.
Oh yeah.
So where we're standing right now, this is another gate, and this was the gate to Hessel. So can you guess what it was called?
Hazelgate.
Hesselgate. So, and that's what it used to look like.
Wow.
Ooh, that
So,
is...
and there's the Humber in the background.
Yeah.
And again, if you look at the floor, you'll see the brickwork is to represent the opening of the gate. Now, during the 1640s, we just mentioned about the English Civil War. There was a garrison of soldiers stationed at the gate to make sure that the right people came into the town, and that ruffians and royalists were kept out. And they disappeared overnight, they vanished. And there were stories about them being dragged away by the devil. And according to this ancient folklore, the devil rode up to Hull, grabbed this garrison of soldiers and took them away. So much so that they barricaded and bricked up this gate. It was closed off for many years.
Wow.
In the 1830s, when they were digging on the south side of Spring Bank on a place called Spring Street, while they were digging, they found several soldiers' bones still wearing their parliamentarian uniforms. So we actually believe that Charles I kidnapped them, murdered them, and then buried them over the other side of the town. But it's not the only story associated with the devil on Humber Street. There's another story further down.
Would they have tried to make a show of killing them then? Would they have done that, like, in secret?
I don't know. I mean, it could have been his men that did it. It could have been
Still,
done without
you'd
them.
think that they'd want to make a show out of doing it.
Yeah. And maybe it was the devil. Who knows?
Maybe it was.
So this is Humber Street then. Until recently, this, as a kid growing up, this was the fruit market. This is where all the fruit warehouses used to stand. This here is Martin's Alley. Locally, it was known as Pig Alley.
Oh, 1 minute.
Bobby.
Trying to see.
Bobby.
Here we go. See it. Yeah.
And
Wow.
it was named Pig Alley because that's where all the abattoirs were.
Right.
So all the pigs would have been taken down there for slaughter. But throughout the years in the Victorian period, it was linked to a very ghastly murder. And then in the 1960s, there was another murder down that alley. So it's got quite a notorious history.
Anything ever sighted down there?
No,
It is
but
look- just
people do
look a
feel
bit-
a little bit weird when they go
Yeah.
down there. I've had a few people say they feel a bit strange. So, at the end, you'll see just in the distance the tidal barrier, and as we approach that way, we'll head towards the deep.
Yeah.
A few years ago, during the City of Culture, we actually had a machine at the end on Hazel Gate, what you could speak into, and the words would come up on the tidal barrier.
What's it?
But you get people swearing, you get
Yeah.
people saying send nudes,
Being idiots.
and stuff like that. And they had to put a break on it to stop swear words. And we have a really bad sense of
Censor.
humour, you know. But you can imagine people coming in via Castle Street would see words up there saying send nudes or and things like that.
So is there any more folklore around?
There is. We're going down now to a property that's linked to the devil.
Yeah.
And we're also going to learn about the Humber Street table tipping scandal.
Oh.
So you'll know yourself, table tipping is very popular
Yeah.
in paranormal investigation. During the 1860s,
1 minute, can't see it. Want to zoom in? It basically says spirit rapping and table turning in Hull. Here we go. They wouldn't
So
take it then.
Basically, what happened during the 1860s, there was a lady who lived down here called Mary Heroliage, and she would say to people, if you come to my house, we'll do table tipping and we'll make contact with the spirits. And she had this really cool idea of getting everyone in the room, turning all the lights off, and then the spirits would come in and chat. And people were blown away by it. And for a long time, people believed it. But then when the lights switched back on, they noticed that various items of jewellery had gone missing. In some instances, clothing had gone missing.
Ah.
And it transpired that when the lights were going out, she was robbing them.
Right.
And it came out, they had undercover police officers come, and they discovered that when the lights went out, people would come in the room, they would pickpocket guests, they would take clothing, and they would do away with it. Now, she originally turned around and said the spirits are doing it.
Was it the port haunting? Did the class it as the port haunting? What we've recently spoke about, isn't it? Where an object just disappears. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would have been like that. She claimed that the spirits were taking it for payment. People believed it, but then when the police officers found out there were pickpockets in operation, she was then taken to court. She stood up in a court of law and said that she had contact with thousands of spirits, including angels and archangels, and she was asked basically to produce evidence in court, and she couldn't, so she was sent to prison for that. And it was part of I'm sure you remember the fake mediums bill and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So she got sent to prison for that, but the story was massive. It made it into the local, national, and even international news. It was reported in Australia and places like that. We're going to just head down this alley. So to tell you the story, I've really got to show you the back of the building.
Just a little bit while we've gone on to that, because that's going to fit in with another live we're going to do with someone about fraud in the Victorian era.
Oh yeah.
And how they did a lot of their seances, how it was set up, it was a lot of magic tricks and things. So the skeptical show that we are going to do, that is going to cover that, so that should be interesting.
I thought it's weird you should mention that, mate.
So where we are right now, this is the back side of Humber Street, but it's the front of West Street. Today it's a car park. Today it's where the wheelie bins go.
Yeah.
But this would have been the site of the Theatre Royal.
Wow.
And basically, one of the gentlemen that came here was a violinist called Paganini. And Paganini, it was rumoured, was crap at playing the violin. And then overnight, he became an international violin sensation, which led people to say that he was basically sold his soul to the devil. And he came to perform in Hull at the Theatre Royal. Now, it's all gone today. It's been replaced by these warehouses, and there's a lot of modern building going on. But I brought you here into the car park near all the wheelie bins, because this is where the heritage plaques are for it. You can't even see them up on the wall.
No.
So yeah, instead of having them on the front, where everyone goes and sits and drinks and eats,
Yeah.
kind of hidden out here.
Oh.
And it's a shame really, but this was a big thriving area.
Yeah.
If you go right back through the history of Hull, there would have been at the front all the warehouses with all the merchants, and then down here there was a big hotel on this side. It was a really, really popular thriving place. And across the way, where the lights are on, that was an old pub called the Oberon. And during the 1970s, there was a report in the Hull newspapers that said the property was haunted. There were stories of people seeing a phantom gentleman who was basically walking through the bar and walked down the steps into the cellar. So they got a paranormal team in. This was way back in the 70s, before Ghostbusters and all that. And they went in there to try and make contact. And they all described a feeling of being watched.
Yeah.
They all felt scared. And numerous people had felt uneasy with this apparition. In later years, they was doing some work around the back. And while they were digging up around the back, they found 2 gravestones.
Wow.
Now, we know no one was buried here. And we know this land came from when they dug the docks, so where have the gravestones come from? It was never fully explained.
Wow. Gonna get run over. Got some interesting art on there, haven't you? 1 minute, we just show this art. Look at that. Oh, look at him. Oh, even. Ah. I like them. No, I don't think they are. Banksy. They're not Banksy, are they?
No, we have a local artist called Craig.
Right.
And he does a lot of stencil work, very similar to So we'll cross. At the front you've got the pier, and that there is the Humber. But there's a lot of building works going on down there at the minute, so you can't really get to it. But we'll go this way around.
Yeah.
And this will take us round. You'll see the deed. And all this is new. This is in the last sort of 10 years.
It is. I mean, when I first started visiting the deed, this wasn't over 10 years ago. It was, but there seems a lot more new things in Hull.
There was a couple of pubs on here, and this was a big shipbuilding yard. But yeah, you go, there's the deed. It's the world's largest submarium. Do you know what a submarium is?
No.
It basically means a big deep fish tank.
Oh.
The word was made up and put in the dictionary so that Hull could claim we've got the only one.
That's clever.
Very clever piece of marketing. But yeah, this is one of the only Millennium projects that's still going.
Yeah.
And it is amazing. The sharks in there.
It is good. I've been a few times.
So this is one of Hull's original docks. And this would have been a graving dock where ships would have come in. and they would have been repaired, or ships would have been built in here. And this is a stage, so you can come here and do performance art. People come and do outdoor yoga, outdoor theatre. Not very well lit at the minute. Usually there's little lights on, can't really see much. And then in the distance, you've got the tidal barrier. So the idea is Hull floods a lot, and there's a big metal gate, and that drops into the river.
Right.
So the deep, you wanted to know about the deep?
Yes.
So in
that's the
2012,
deep.
a lady called Emma Hand came forward, and she basically had taken a photograph, and on the photograph, it looked like there was a face in the aquarium. Now, the Hull Daily Mail ran a piece on it. They came to me for my opinion, and basically, the land at that side is relatively new in terms of Hull's history. Prior to that being there was a shipyard which was owned by a guy called Martin Samuelson, but most of that was only put there in the 1700s. If you can imagine where the bridge is, where the edge of the bridge is there, all that land south of that was all reclaimed from the docks. All the spoil from the docks was put there, and Hull was built out. So it's relatively modern land in terms of Hull's history. But after that, a night watchman came forward, and he said that he worked in there on a night, and when he was walking around on a night, he saw a gentleman walking around in the timeline. You know, when you walk from the top of the building and you follow the path before you get to the big tanks, he'd seen someone walking around there, and when they approached him, he vanished. So yeah, I mean, it could be there were a lot of trawlers that sank in the Humber. There were a lot of ships that were sunk. It could be that it's something related to the Humber itself. But one of my favourite stories about this particular area, there was an old tower that was just on the waterfront. So where we've just been on the car park, that would have been a jetty-shaped area. And there was a tower there, and it was known as Harry Oglesby's Tower. And according to the story, Harry Oglesby was a prisoner that escaped and basically ran from the tower. And when he escaped, so you'll just see that little plot of land there.
A minute. Yeah.
So this here, where it sticks out a little bit, this was where the tower supposedly stood. And he escaped, and he ran up the river. So he would have run up here along the banks of the river. And it was said that when he escaped, he cut his artery in his neck. And he bled out, and he died in the river. But for years after, children were told not to go near the river because Harry Oglesby would get you. And it was one of them cautionary tales.
Yeah,
like as a
legend.
kid growing up, we were told them legends. But then when you get a little bit older and you listen to the story, you think, I want to go and investigate that and see if I can see Harry. And
I've got a few of them in Nottingham that I've dug up to see. You know what you do, don't you? I think everyone's got childhood stories of stay away from there, you know, because witches aren't there, or do you know what I mean, or this, that and the other, and
don't touch this,
don't run around that tree 5 times because
Don't look through private church at midnight because you'll see the manner of your death.
Oh yeah, there's one like that.
And then it'll happen that you know.
Either.
yes.
If you see yourself walking through the cemetery, it means that you're going to die within next year.
24th of April, that isn't it? Yeah, that could be your stage, they was all saying, for your singing.
I do think I was a performer in a previous life. It's just unfortunately where I left my talent. But I did my rendition of Little Donkey is the best.
Has anybody got any more questions?
Yeah, has anyone got any questions?
There's a stone in Old Clee that's a wishing stone. Hi, Daryl. We've got one.
We've got a
called...
money tree in one of the local cemeteries, which is said to be good luck. It's got money embedded in it.
Yeah?
But I researched that for an article and found a local artist had made it.
Came across a money tree on his way up to Thor's Cave.
Yes, you did, yeah.
It's like a trunk with loads of coins in it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we were
like
like,
some
my
of them.
God.
So an artist just did it then?
Yeah, an artist has made it. He created several artworks around Hull, and he found out that I was researching it, and he got in touch with me and told me about other artworks he'd created, and actually sent me some brochures and stuff like that about his artworks and where he created them and stuff. So while we're here, I'll talk about the other side of the river. So where we are right now, this is technically Hull City Centre, but the river splits the city in two. So from that side of the river, which is Easton, or more specifically Dartford, your family would have been involved in the timber trade, or you would be a supporter of Hull KR, the Rovers. And then if you're from that side of Hull, which is West Hull, your family would be involved in the fishing industry, and you would be a supporter of Hull FC. So the city's kind of split in two, and there's a bit of a rivalry. So you often hear, especially on match day when it's derby day and the two rugby teams are playing each other, the banter on land between the two teams that goes on, and it's all good-hearted. But there is a rivalry between the two sides.
Right.
I broke the cardinal rule. I met a girl from West Hull and married her. So it was like Romeo and Juliet from different sides of the city, but. Yeah, it still divides the city to this day.
Wow.
Over this side, you've got where the blockhouses would have stood, which I talked about earlier. So at this end was the south blockhouse. The north blockhouse is where a certain pharmacy is that we met at many years ago.
Yeah.
And in the middle was the castle. There was lots of stories about this area being haunted because there were stories of troops working on the citadel that had shot themselves, killed themselves, and they'd been seen marching around the battlements and things like that. And if you look into the water itself at the River Hull, it's quite murky. And that's basically that if you come during the day, it's very brown. It looks like Charlene the Chocolate Factory's
It does, doesn't it?
river, yeah, but it's not as appetising.
What's that in aid of, Mike? The True Love bus?
Well, that there is basically those two came to the UK on board a ship called the True Love, and they did like a little tour of the UK. Funnily enough, they weren't vaccinated, and they both caught smallpox and died. And we've got their husband and wife. But if you go in the Maritime Museum, their busts are there with the captain of the ship, and it tells you a little bit. Just here.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh,
And it's
that's
been there
lovely.
for quite a long time. But it's amazing how many people don't realise it's there. And I often, when I'm doing the tours with the students, I'll say to them, I'll take you somewhere where you can find true love. And I'll stand here and they'll look around at the brown sill and all the mud, and they'll be like, what? And then I'll point out the heads. It's a lovely story. So I'm going to take you up the river, and then we'll cut in and we'll go to King Billy. We'll go see King Billy because this is one of them. It's a local ghost story attached to it, but it's also there's loads of myths and legends, and it's the ideal kind of subject matter for the channel. It's something that I've researched for years and I've got a personal connection to. My grandfather was photographed sat on the steps of King Billy.
Oh, wow.
But I'll take you there and I'll tell you some of the stories associated with it.
We've got On This Spot, 1918.
Oh, we like these, don't we?
Right, so in Hull, we have real history and we have made up history. So these are all 10 heritage plaques. And there's a few of these dotted around the city. And they just tell quirky stories.
Yeah.
So you've got things to do with chip spice. You've got one that's a Venn diagram to do with John Venn because he was born in Dartford. You've got another one that's shaped like a rugby ball that's at the other bridge, right at the other side, and it basically says this is where the city is split in two and that you're either one team or the other, you can't be both. But yeah, there's a few, and they're quite quirky. And I posted a picture online not long ago. This area, we get a lot of kids coming down doing graffiti and stuff like that. And someone had posted a pentagram on the wall.
Oh, I can see it.
And opposite the pentagram there was loads of traffic cones. So I took a picture with all the traffic cones with the pentagram in, and I posted it on social media and said it was a satanic meeting, a satanic traffic cone. You can see them all laid down there. But yeah, we have a weird sense of humour in the city. So,
It's a meeting of satanic traffic cones.
yeah.
I love it.
So this here then, this is where Hull was really religious. Before it became Hull, it was a settlement for monks. And it had a number of monks here, and they basically traded using wool and wine. And we had the Black Friars and we had the White Friars. Now the Black Friars we've just passed Blackfriars Gate, but this land here, going all the way back to where the multi-storey car park is, this was where the Blackfriars would have been. And then on Whiteford Gate is where the Whitefriars would have been. And basically, Edward I came to Hull in 1299. He saw the opportunity to do something because it was a thriving port already. We had the monks trading, and he basically created our first charter, and that charter meant that we became the King's Town upon the River Hull.
Right.
So technically, we are Kingston upon Hull.
Yeah.
Locally, we just call it Hull.
Yeah.
But if you're a true local, you don't pronounce the H. So
Right.
it's just Hull. And it's the same with horses. We're going to go see King Billy in a minute on his horse. We don't call it a horse. In Hull, it's a horse. And we have that a lot. But this is where the friary used to be. And one of the interesting things about this area, when they dug it up to do an archaeological expedition, they discovered that the monks had syphilis.
Right.
Now, they'd all sworn a vow of chastity. So where did they get that from? And they also
Naughty
found
monks.
a pair of underpants that were like the oldest underpants in the world. So yeah, I mean, strange finds. Hull also has the oldest ball in the world, which was used by monks to do bowling.
Wow.
When they had the bowling greens and stuff like that. But yeah, the river is, in its heyday, this would have been just bustling. At the other side, you would have had all the warehouses. Many of them were bombed during the Second World War. Many of them fell down. There was a couple that were involved in fires. And then, if you can imagine, at that side would have been a massive curtain wall with the castle in the middle. And so much so, there's streets over there that are called Castle Street, Tower Street. They're all linked to the kind of castle and stuff like that.
Don't you just wish that you could go back in time for one day just to see what it looks like, to see what life would be like?
I wish I could go back to like the 700s.
Anyone in chat, what would you go back to if you had the chance to go back to any time?
I think for me, it would have been Victorian period.
Yeah.
Well, the 1880s, obviously. Go to London, see Jack Ripper.
Either the 1300s, the 1500s, or I'd go way back to the 700s. I like the Tudors, the Plantagenets. I'm obsessed with them actually. And then I also like Alfred the Great. That's missing a big chunk of history.
Well, Henry VIII came to Hull. He was involved in the fortifications. He basically came and said we need them strengthening, and it was his charters that helped create kind of the blockhouses and the curtain wall and stuff like that. His sword is still in the collection of the City Council. I have the sword here. And then what I like about this area, so this is all quite modern, but if you go back into the Victorian period, there would have been loads of alleyways and entries and courts all leading off here. And if you look carefully, you can see on those ones, you'll see they've put the old signs up.
Oh, yeah.
So an exit entry, and these would have all gone. So in this plot of land, we had a place called Fetter Lane, which is where one of Hull prisons was situated, and it would have been the worst of the worst. If you can imagine, no windows, there would have been bars on the windows. there would have been nothing on the floor. It would have been bare stone. Stories of rats running across the floor and stuff like that. No toilets. It would have been awful. But this area was real tightly packed, and we lost a lot of this in the First World War. This area was bombed quite heavily during the Zeppelin raids. So even before the Second World War, this area was a mess. And then also during the late 1800s and early 1900s, we had big slum clearance programs. So the Board of Health in Hull came to courts like this and said that they're not sanitary, there's no running water, there's no natural light, there's no toilets, knock them down. So we had massive clearance programs. So between sort of like the 1870s and the 1950s, large parts of Hull were just wiped off the map. And people were moved out to the estates, and that's when we lost a lot of our community spirit. But today, I think we're getting that back. Hull's been described as Britain's biggest village, because everybody knows everyone. Like when you walk on the way here tonight, I saw loads of people that I knew and they all said hello and stuff like that. And it's a real friendly place. When you come, if you go into a pub, people just talk to you and stuff like that. And it is just a nice, it's
Nice place to live.
I like places like that.
So we'll walk down to Marketplace and we'll go see King Billy. So this is Liberty Lane that we're walking down now. Historically, this wouldn't have been here. This would have been a continuation of all these slums and courts and things like that. But down here was a large settlement of Jewish families. Hull had settlements right across the town. So we had what would have been a Little Italy. We had what would have been a little Chinatown. There was a big Jewish settlement here. And it was an international port. So if you can imagine, trade would have come in from all corners of the world. And with that, people would come to the town and they would stay. So there's lots of stories linked to when the Italians was here, when the French was here, we had a German settlement here. And then during the First World War, when war was declared, a lot of the German families had to change the names because there was hatred, there was an anti-German feeling in Hull. So you had one of the families was called the Honorines, and they were attacked. Even though their sons had gone to fight for Great Britain, they were attacked by all these racists, and they had to change their name to Jones, so that people wouldn't put the two and two together and
attack them.
Yeah, this is the marketplace. So I'm going to take you down to see King Billy.
King Billy? Are they... We are? We're nearly done. Are they renovating the church then?
Yeah, they've been doing stuff at the church. Putting in a new... I believe it's going to be a cafe centre.
Oh, good.
This area, they're reflooring the road. It's been like this for about 3 weeks. Been a nightmare for the tours and stuff like that. Trying to get back on the highways and stuff.
I sound like a galloping horse. It's this chain on my bag as I'm... Well, Ali lives in Bristol, so she knew nothing north, so it's been really interesting. She's enjoyed it.
We'll stand right outside King Billy and it'll give you an idea.
Oh, there he is.
What it looks like.
I've just spotted him. See. Thank you, Kate. Kate did pick up on the World War. Ah, they painted it though, weren't they? Why they painted it that colour for? It needs to be red.
Oh, well, in Hull, we don't have BT, So our telephone boxes are cream,
Oh.
and they're part of Kingston Communications. But if you look closely, this one's gold.
Oh.
And that's because just round the corner where we first started is the boxing gym where Olympic gold medal winner Luke Campbell trained. So this was painted in his honour. And then in Westall on Ezel Road where he grew up, there's a post box painted gold as well in his honour.
Right.
But yeah, we also have one that's black and amber in honour of Jean, the bee lady, who passed away recently. But yeah, we don't have normal. People come to Hull and you can buy key rings with white telephone boxes on.
Yeah, 'cause it's first time I've ever seen a. I mean, you don't see the red telephone boxes often anymore, anyway, do you? And if you do, they've got a defibrillator in them nowadays.
Defib, yeah.
That's a defib.
Defibrillator.
Or they're a library. Then you've changed as a library.
So King Billy then, there he is on his horse. So this is the marketplace as it was.
It's just behind.
So there's a few stories attached to our statue of King Billy. The first one is that the sculptor killed himself because he left the stirrups off. Right. And the second one is at midnight he gets off his horse and goes for a drink in the pub.
Right.
So now the first story, when King Billy came to Hull as a statue, it wasn't meant for Hull. It was actually meant for Bristol. But Bristol didn't want him, so Hull got him a knockdown cheap price. Before we saw him, we were shown a sketch and the model, and none of them had stirrups on because he's designed to look like a Roman general, and Roman generals didn't have stirrups. The guy who created him, Peter Shoemaker, was Dutch. He went back to Holland. He didn't die until he was in his 90s, and it was natural causes. But in 1901, a Hull sculptor called William Day Keyworth Jr. killed himself. He shot himself in the head on Spring Bank in his warehouse. I've not got the newspaper clipping. And when he shot himself, the two stories became twisted.
Right.
And since then, it's the belief that he left the stirrups off and he never. The story about him getting off his horse is even better. So this was the marketplace. If you can imagine in the Victorian period, right up to the 1930s, this was full of pubs, clubs, theatres. There was even a waxworks down here. All of them had bars, all of them had alcohol. The locals have a wicked sense of humour. So they would be in them supping all day. All the out-of-towners would come here to sell their goods and wares at the market. So people from the surrounding towns and villages would be here. And we'd say to him, if you come back at midnight, I'll get off his horse. So by midnight, we're all pissed. We're all really, really drunk. All the out-of-towners are stood waiting, and he never gets off his horse. So we all come out the pubs and we're all laughing like, you idiots, fancy believing that. But since then, that story has become part of our folklore. Yeah. The original story was, he got off his horse, and he went to the Cross Keys Hotel, which was over there. When the Cross Keys was knocked down, the story was that he went to King Billy, which is a pub just there. When King Billy was closed, he went to the Corn Exchange, which is just back up that way. The story of the bells as well, some people say when it strikes midnight, some say 13, some say 14, some say 15, and the location of the bells, so Holy Trinity Church, St Mary's Church, all these stories, these wonderful stories. And as a kid, I remember coming here with my dad and it was snowing, and I remember he stood here against the front of the pub, and he said stay there, and he left me and he walked out to King Billy, and then he retraced his footsteps back. And I said to him, Dad, what are you doing? He said, when they come out of the pub later on, they're all drunk, they'll look at the floor and see one set of footprints and think King Billy's got off his horse. And that stuck with me forever. I always remember that being here with my dad and listening to that story. And it's amazing that underneath where all these gates are, there's some really old Victorian gents' toilets. In the old days, they used to have cisterns in there, and in the water, they used to have goldfish. So when you went to the toilet, the goldfish would be swimming about above your head. They're all closed off at the minute. It's such a shame. We have King Billy because when he came into power, at that time the Protestants and the Catholics in Hull were fighting, and he brought peace to the town, so that's why we have him. He never actually came here, but one of the great reasons I think we should have the statue, do you know what King Billy introduced to Great Britain? Gin. So, and that's why I think we should have him.
Yes. Yes.
Gin. It's a good enough reason.
Did you want to have a closer look at Billy? Let me just ask, did you all want a closer look at him? I can run up to him.
Yeah.
Let's see if he gets off his ass for me.
Keep watching to the right because the traffic comes on that.
Okay, I'll just get knocked over while I'm doing it. You wanted me to run then, didn't you?
There's 4
It
other
is.
King Billies in Great Britain, and we're the only place with these weird stories connected to the
Yeah.
statue.
That's because you've got great humour then. No one else
Yeah.
has.
Yeah, we have this wicked, weird sense of humour.
Wicked shot with the moon. Ah, did you get the moon in with it as well then? Somebody got... Didn't realise I got the moon in with it then. I know, I have as well. Thank you so much, Mike. She has no singing tonight.
I know.
I think I've just been walking around with my mouth open.
Yeah. Me and Charlene have been catching flies the whole time.
It's been nice to show you guys around, and we run tours all year round in all weathers. We've run them in the snow, in the rain, during thunderstorms. We've had people come on the tours. Yeah, it's nice to show people. I love showing people around because I'm proud of my city and I'm proud of its history. So I like showing people around.
Where can everyone find you?
On Facebook, Amazing Full Tours, or on Twitter at Covell, and they'll find all the tour details and stuff. We do over 40 different tours in full in East Yorkshire. We run ghost tours every weekend, but we also do, if you're a private booking, you can book mix and match tours, so you can have a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do like tours about World War I, World War II, Victorian, Georgian.
So like topic specific.
Yeah,
which
like,
is good.
Lost
Yeah.
pubs, lost cinemas, lost theatres, lost churches.
You literally are like the encyclopedia
Of who?
Yeah.
of Hull. That is what you are.
Yeah, well, I read.
And most of Yorkshire, and possibly most of Great Britain.
I mean, when groups come to me, I try and help them. When you guys come, I always love helping you guys and finding history for you guys and maps and stuff for your videos and things. But yeah, I mean, people come from all over asking questions.
Well, that's when you know you do a good job.
It is.
Yeah, and I always try and help people, you know, and give them information. And what I do is I pride myself on the fact that I use them historical.
Yeah.
If someone comes to me and says, "Can you look at the history of this building?" I don't use Google because it's full of rubbish. I go to the archives and I go back to all the old newspapers and all the old maps and
You do the old school research.
yeah. So, and I find it gives me more information, more names, more dates than what you'd find on Google anyway. I often get people come and say, "We've tried to research it and we can't find anything," and I'll say, "Well, where have you looked, Google?" And I'll say, "Right, well, give me half an hour," and then I'll come back with loads of dates and maps and stuff like that. Yeah, and people like it, and I enjoy doing it as well.
Well, we always try to use historical fact. You know, if I can try and get that newspaper clipping to prove, do you know what I mean? I mean, we don't always do the research before. We'll do it after.
Yeah, I mean that's
Sometimes
it for you guys being paranormal investigators. You go in blind, don't you? Because you don't want to know that because you don't want it to influence you.
Yeah.
And you don't want your viewers to say that you've influenced
Yeah.
it because you had pre-knowledge. When I did a lot of work for Most Haunted Live, Paranormal Lockdown, I never gave them access to history because I said to them, I don't want it to sway and I don't want people to say that you knew it was that because Mike said. So what I would do is I'd put it on my tablet, I'd lock my tablet so that so no one knew the password. Then I'd put it in a metal case and I'd lock that as well, so no one had access to that. So I knew then that when they came out with stuff, the only acceptable conclusion was that it was paranormal. You know, so
You do books as well. Where can everyone find your
Yes,
books? He's got an array of book.
I've got over 30 books published. I've just finished book 55. Book 31's on its way, which is a 39 Degree Street book. You can find them on Amazon under Mike Covell. If you look at the Kindle editions. They often go down to as little as 99p, so you can download them onto your tablet or your phone or your computer or your laptop, or the paperback ones. If you're from Hull and you get a paperback edition, if you bring it to a tour or a lecture, we'll get it signed for you. Yeah, I mean, there's so many, I couldn't even list
It's not just about Hull as well, there's other ones, isn't there, like Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, I've written books about Jack the Ripper.
We should do a competition with a signed one.
Yes.
Yeah, I've written books about East Yorkshire, and at the minute I've been working on books. The new set of books that will come out will be about North Yorkshire. I've been doing a lot of research in York, in Scarborough, and Whitby, in the archives and stuff like that. During lockdown, it was really awkward because you couldn't get a lot of research done. So a lot of archives were opening up their archives for free, so you could download digital stuff. So I was downloading loads and loads and going through thousands of documents, looking at history and research and stuff for new books. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the way.
But I'll post it on when I got back in the car and whatnot. We'll post.
We'll always keep you updated on what
Yes,
he's doing.
as soon as 39 degrees out, I will definitely be sharing that one. And I'll definitely be buying it. So we will share it on the page anyway. So thank you so much, Mike. We've all enjoyed it. And the guys have all enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. You may see Mike soon on various other things. He's always popping up on TV now and again, aren't you, Mike?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure you'll not see the last of him. All right. So we're going to call it a night there. I will possibly be live tomorrow at the Galleries of Justice with Pat for a lone vigil in one area for an hour. So that should be an interesting one, guys. So keep a lookout for a time. I'll post a time in the day tomorrow. All right, so thank you everyone, thank you very much. Good night, sweet dreams. Bye bye. Bye bye.